All right, welcome to the post-game show, everybody. Dan Tanner, Altitude Sports Radio 92.5. That was one ugly basketball game from your Denver Nuggets this evening. 149-135 is your final. At Ball Arena, the Nuggets fall for the second straight time this year to the Cavaliers. Now, if you remember, back in game number one a couple of weeks ago, the Cavs hit 22 three-pointers in that game to the Nuggets 6. Well, the Cavs hit 23 tonight. So if you thought the 22 in Cleveland a couple weeks ago was a lot, it was even worse at Ball Arena tonight. So welcome into the post-game show. Always feel free to leave me your comments. And, I want to get you all involved on the show and what is going on with the Denver Nuggets. So, really just interesting basketball game to say the least tonight. So the Nuggets defense was absolutely abhorrent tonight against the Cavaliers. They gave up 40 points in the first quarter, 40 in the second. The Cavs scored 80 points by halftime tonight. By the way, their 149 total overall is the most they've scored on the road, I believe, in their franchise history. I believe that's what Marlo said on the broadcast. So, wow. Obviously, no Aaron Gordon tonight. So, he's one of your better all-around defenders. But let's be honest. Aaron Gordon wouldn't have made much of a difference tonight. The Cavs were getting whatever they wanted. I mean, you had Evan Mobley, the 7-footer from USC, out there just raining it down from beyond the arc. He was 4 of 6 from 3. Nobody was covering him. And honestly, I don't really blame the Nuggets for not guarding Evan Mobley at the three-point line. Obviously, he's a capable three-point shooter, as we saw tonight. But you've got Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland running around out there, and Dean Wade just jacking up 3 after 3. I get why Evan Mobley was open beyond the arc tonight, and he was just hitting them. So, wow. Yeah, just defensively for the Nuggets tonight there was no defense. Yeah, I mean, they scored 135 points. You should win every game you score 135 points. But obviously, the Nuggets did not deserve to win this game. And, second loss in a row after Christmas night's game against Phoenix and Arizona. It's just kind of interesting to me. The Nuggets get a really solid, positive potential momentum shifting win against the Phoenix Suns 2 days before Christmas. I mean, they blow the Suns out. I thought it was one of the Nuggets' best games of the year. And then you go into Phoenix, you kind of have a dud on Christmas evening. Okay, Nuggets usually don't play very well on Christmas for whatever reason. I think they have 3 wins and 9 tries on Christmas or something along those lines. So they've always struggled on Christmas for whatever reason. And then look, I'll tell you this much. As much as the Nuggets defense struggled tonight, the Cavaliers have to be the favorites to win the title right now. I mean, this team is unbelievably impressive. Donovan Mitchell is playing at an MVP type level. He has been absolutely phenomenal this year. I've always loved Darius Garland. I think he's a really, really good guard for the Cavaliers. He was fantastic tonight with 25 points, 10 of 18 from the field. Jared Allen, I mean, super efficient night, 10 of 13. Joker, no interior defense tonight from Nikola Jokic. And I get it. It was the entire team as a whole, but nobody, including Joker, was playing any sort of defense tonight for the Nuggets. So it was a weird starting lineup tonight. No Aaron Gordon, like I said. So Malone did something a little unique that he has not done so far this season. He started Jamal Murray and Russell Westbrook. So that was an interesting combination with Christian Brown, by the way. So you had 3 guards starting to go along with Michael Porter Jr. and Nikola Jokic. So a little bit of a quirky lineup to begin the game. But hey, I mean, honestly, when I saw that, I'm like, why not? I'm okay with Malone trying these sort of unique, quirky lineups. Nothing's working right now for the Nuggets. So now this was their worst defensive performance of the season. So we'll see if he goes back to that. It's a small lineup for sure. So that'll be interesting to see if Malone tries that out again. After tonight, I doubt he will. But like the first quarter, I thought, but other than defensively, I thought the Nuggets played really well. Michael Porter Jr. had 13 points in that first quarter on 4 of 4 from beyond the arc. He was fantastic in the first quarter. But like we've talked about, or I've talked about on the show many, many times over the years, it doesn't go to the next quarter, go to the next half. There's no consistency. When MPJ has a really big quarter, you can pretty much bet your mortgage or bet your next paycheck that he's going to fall off for the rest of the game. He just can't seem to put more than one really solid quarter together. And that's been one of my biggest issues with Michael over the course of his career, and especially now, especially with what he's getting paid, and not only that, but just what the expectations are of him, what this team needs from him to be contenders. So again, great first quarter from MPJ tonight, but he scored 5 points the rest of the game in a game where the team scored 135. Like, the offense wasn't the issue tonight for Denver, but MPJ scores 5 points after a great first quarter. It's just, those are the types of things that I think the front office sees and gives them pause on if MPJ is going to be here for the long term or not. In a bit, we're going to get into, I'm sure a lot of you listening have seen this or heard people talking about this, but the numbers when Jamal Murray starts versus when Russell Westbrook starts are stunning. So I do want to get into that here in just a little bit. But as far as the game goes tonight, I thought a bright spot for Denver was Peyton Watson was tremendous. 6 of 8 from the field, hit both of his 3-point attempts, 4 out of 5 from the free throw line. He was aggressive, couple of assists, a steal, a block. I mean, he was all over the place. Now, he finished the game a minus 16, which isn't great, but every single starter finished in the minus. And he was out there a lot with the starting unit because he was playing so well. So that was a bright spot tonight. I thought Peyton Watson, I really think over the last couple of weeks, he has really started to unlock something in his game. He just looks like a completely different player than we saw early on in the season. So one positive tonight for me was definitely Peyton Watson. And, it was weird. I thought Jamal actually had a pretty good game tonight overall. I thought he was moving around really well. Obviously missed the game here against the Suns, was back Christmas night, didn't look right, but I thought he looked a lot better tonight. 10 of 20 shooting overall, 3 of 6 from 3, 27 points, but and 11 assists. So he was really good in the passing game as well. But there were a couple of spurts in that third quarter where Jamal hit a couple of back-to-back shots, and you can tell he really loves going up against Donovan Mitchell. I think some of that goes back to the bubble. If you remember, the Nuggets obviously played Utah when Donovan Mitchell was with the Jazz in the bubble in the playoffs. And there's that viral video on Instagram of, they're all in the same resort because they can't leave the bubble. And the Nuggets just had a huge comeback win. I think it was game 1. And then, it was. And then the Nuggets lost the next 3 and then ultimately won the series. But after game 1, Jamal is videotaping Donovan Mitchell sitting at the pool, and he's, playfully talking trash to him. And you could tell like Donovan was kind of like chuckling at it, but also he was like a little bit ticked off that he's kind of annoyed. So I think the reason I'm bringing this up is I think these two really love going at it. And they're very, very competitive when they're going up against each other. And the reason I say that is there were multiple instances tonight where you could hear on the TV broadcast the mics picking up Jamal and Donovan kind of jawing back and forth. In fact, there was a couple of incidents where when Donovan Mitchell was on the bench, you could hear Jamal Murray saying, come on, Mitch, like egging them on a little bit, which was interesting because Donovan was cooking the Nuggets tonight. So, okay. I thought that was a little odd, but hey, I do like the fire and the competitiveness from Jamal. But there was a couple of instances in that third quarter where Jamal hit a couple of back-to-back shots, and you're like, okay, like, we've seen this before from Jamal Murray. He might be starting to heat up. And I don't even necessarily think it was anything on the offensive end that killed that momentum for Jamal Murray potentially going on a patented Murray flurry. What killed the momentum was the Nuggets couldn't get a stop. So there's no fast break opportunities, no transition offense, really hardly at all tonight because the Cavs are hitting everything in sight. They shoot 57% from the field, 48% from three. Like, again, the offense is fine. I haven't been concerned with the offense really at all over the last 8 years in the Jokic era. But the defense has never been this bad in the Jokic era, at least in their true championship window over the last 3 or 4 years after Jamal came back and after the Aaron Gordon trade and all that. So that's something I'm trying to think of. Like, the Nuggets don't need to make a move to go get a guy that can create his own shot, in my opinion. We've talked about the reports saying Zach LaVine's a possibility, Cam Thomas in Brooklyn, etc. The Nuggets are looking for somebody to create their own shot. Now, I understand their thinking. I'm not saying they don't need it. I don't think it's as important as other areas. And when you have Nikola Jokic, like, he can make it work on the offensive end. He can make it work well enough for this team to compete for a title. But at this point, you've got to prioritize defense in a trade. And look, I'm not asking, and I've talked about this before, I'm not asking for the Nuggets to be a top 5 defensive team. They don't need to be a top 5 defensive team. They need to be a top 12 defensive team, a top 14 defensive team. They were in like the top 10, I think. They're right around 10 the year they won the championship. So the offense is good enough to where the defense doesn't have to be stellar, but it needs to be competent. And right now it's completely incompetent on the defensive end. So that'll be something interesting to monitor as well. We'll see if the front office, if they do make a move, which I think they're going to, because this team is not a championship contender as constructed. So I do think they will make a move. But what I'm interested to see is, do they go for the offensive player, create your own shot, create your own offense type of guy, especially when Joker's off the floor? That's really when they need that. But in the playoffs, he's going to be on the floor damn near every minute anyway. So it'll be really, really interesting to see what they do as far as their defense goes. I mean, it kind of reminds me of the Mavs a little bit. Like, great offensive team, got them to the finals last year, but they just couldn't play enough clutch time defense to overcome the Celtics. That's really kind of what their downfall was in those finals. So we'll see. It's going to be interesting. The trade deadline's still a ways away. So they have plenty of time to at least assess what they want to do as far as when the trade deadline is. Now, if they want to compete for a top 4 seed in the West, time's running out pretty quick. Now, bad news for Dallas, but good news for everybody else in the Western Conference playoff picture. Yesterday, it was reported that Luka Doncic is going to be out for at least a month with, I believe it was an ankle issue. So, that's obviously, I don't root for injuries or anything like that. But if you're another playoff contending team in the West, that's a big blow to Dallas. In fact, Dallas right now is in the 4 seed at 20-11, and the Nuggets slid down to the 7 seed. So they'd be in the play-in tournament if the playoffs started today. Now, I get it. There's still, 2/3 of the season left to go, but now's your chance. The Lakers are having a bunch of issues, although they're in the 5 seed right now at 17-13, if you can believe it. Clippers right behind them, and then Denver and Minnesota. Golden State has cooled off a lot too, by the way. They were atop of the West there early on in the season. They're now in the 9 seed. So, but yeah, so there is some opportunities ahead for the Nuggets as far as the Western Conference standings goes. But man, you're not going to be able to compete in the West with the defense that we've seen this season. And like, here's the thing: it hasn't just been tonight; it's been throughout the season. Now, tonight was sort of the culmination of a bad defensive team and their worst defensive performance of the year, but I don't think they need to make a move to go get a pure scorer. I think they need to really, really try to buckle things down on the defensive end. And it'll be an interesting sort of dynamic as far as what they want to do, because Michael Malone is a defensive coach. As good as the Nuggets are offensively, that's because Nikola Jokic is amazing. I guarantee you this is like making him pull his hair out and lose sleep at night, because he knows that this team has to be better defensively if they want to win a championship in the Jokic era. So it's going to really, really be interesting. All right, let's get to some of your comments here. My guy Dante weighs in. Could the Nuggets have gotten Donovan Mitchell if they hadn't extended Jamal Murray's contract? I'd have to look at Donovan's contract. I'll tell you what, they could have gotten him in the draft. Technically, the Nuggets drafted Donovan Mitchell, but the draft picks in the NBA are really weird. He wore a Nuggets hat, even though they knew he was going to Utah. So, but yeah, no, the cap situation the Nuggets are in right now is crazy. And if they didn't sign Murray to a contract extension, could they have traded for Donovan? I'm sure they could have figured out a way to make it work, but Cleveland wouldn't have given him up. Like that wouldn't have been an option either way. So that'd be nice, but no, that never would have happened. Let's see here. Ray says Malone's playing chess with his defensive schemes while everyone else is playing checkers. Okay, explain to me what you mean by that, Ray, because it looks like the Nuggets are playing checkers and everybody else's offense is playing chess. That's what it looks like right now. Griffin, the highs of this team are so high and the lows are so low, beyond frustrating how inconsistent this team is. It seems like all opposing offenses need to do is set a pick for a wide open shot. Yeah, Griffin, I couldn't agree with you more. And that's something, in fact, I've talked about a lot on the show, is not just team inconsistency, but player inconsistency, particularly Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. I mean, those guys, at least right now, are the epitome of inconsistent. Like I said, MPJ had a tremendous first quarter, 13 points, hit all 4 of his 3-point attempts. I mean, he was cooking. When are we going to see Michael Porter Jr. have a quarter like that, and instead of falling off the cliff, actually build upon that momentum he built up for himself? I don't think I've ever seen that in his career so far. So that's really what's perplexing to me. And Jamal has had spurts of greatness for, a couple of weeks stretch, a month stretch, particularly in the playoffs a couple of times, which is why we remember it so well. But in the regular season and in the playoffs last year, honestly, Jamal's had the same issues. Not as obvious and transparent as Michael Porter Jr.'s inconsistencies, because we have seen Jamal look like a superstar for a month straight in the playoffs, but he has more of those stretches than you would think. And, he's had nagging injuries for what seems like the entirety of his career. So I'm sure that's not helping much. But those two guys in particular, and I said before the season, if you're going to win a championship, if you're the Nuggets and you have title aspirations, Michael Porter Jr. and Jamal Murray better play really well and really consistently. With the salary cap structure the way it is, with how this team is built, those two have to be better. I mean, there's just no way around it. Or you have to look at a trade. And unfortunately, they can't trade Jamal this year. I mean, that's not even an option. I'm not saying they would, but that's not even an option right now. So really frustrating just to see what's been going on with the Nuggets in the Jokic era. I think that's what's frustrating for most, if not all, fans. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I've seen a lot of people, on our text line at the station and just on Twitter in general, frustrated with the team wasting the Jokic prime years. And I don't think the title window is closed. I think it's closing quicker than anybody anticipated. But I think the Nuggets are a move or two away potentially of being right back in this thing. When you have Nikola Jokic, I've always said you have a shot. Now, the percentage of that shot has gone down significantly, but it's still there. But the problems right now are blatantly obvious. The defense has to be better. And honestly, a lot of that falls on Michael Malone as well. I have not been super critical of Malone this year, and I still won't be, because I truly do believe that this is not Malone's fault. What's going on right now? The roster isn't suited to be a super consistent on either end of the floor type of roster, and they're not suited to be a great defensive team. That's why I think they need to make a move for defense over offense at the trade deadline. But Malone, like I've said, is a defensive coach, and you know, a lot of this falls on him, whether it's scheme or matchups or rotations, lineups. I mean, what you name it, they've got to try something different at this point, because it's just not working. So I will be critical of Malone in that area, but again, as far as just the team in general goes, if you're upset with Malone, I mean, I don't really know what to tell you. What's he supposed to do other than the team making a trade and trying something different? So, you know, it is obviously frustrating. I get it. And, you know, a lot of the blame goes on Michael Malone. Boy, you should have seen Coach Malone's presser before the game. He was asked about Mike Brown being fired by the Kings today. And if you remember, Michael Malone was once fired by the Sacramento Kings. In fact, that was his job before he got hired by the Nuggets and won a championship. But Michael Malone was livid. He basically said what pissed him off most was he found out Mike Brown got fired after morning shoot around. He was at practice, and then he was in the car on the way to the airport to go wherever the team is going. They called him to fire him. And Malone said, yeah, you know, it doesn't shock me, because number one, NBA coaches are always on the hot seat wherever you are. That's just the nature of the business. But number two, he's like, I've been fired by the same guy, and I know that guy. And he said they have no class and no balls. That's what he said about the Kings organization. So I guess my point with this is, and I've heard from the Fire Malone crowd, look, the thing you got to understand with us media people, and especially at the radio station, if you say Fire Malone, we get these texts every game, every season, basically no matter what, unless the team's on just an absolute heater. It's the same with the Avalanche too, by the way. I mean, I've seen more Fire Bednar texts than I can count. And they both won titles. And this was before they won titles, by the way. Just remember that. Now, look, I'm not saying this to say that they can never get fired, and because they've won a championship, now they are no longer, you know, in need of being held accountable by the fans. I'm not, or the media, us. I'm not saying that at all. But I look at the Milwaukee Bucks, and they fire their head coach. They won a title with. They bring in Doc Rivers, and the Bucks have really not been great since then. And that was, you know, I think it was like 20 or 30 games into the last season. They're bringing Doc Rivers, and they've been struggling this year. I mean, they picked it up a little bit recently. They're 16-13 on the year, but the grass is not always greener. And again, if you're frustrated with Malone, fair enough. But if you want him gone, I mean, who's going to replace him that's going to be better? And not only that, what are they going to do differently with this roster? That's the question that you need to ask yourself. I don't see a head coach out there that could come in and totally revitalize this team with this current roster. I just don't think that's feasible or reasonable. So it's a roster issue to me. It is. plain and simple. And, Julian Strawther's been playing better as of late, but if you're relying on him and Peyton Watson to be your go-to guys off the bench to really produce for you night in and night out, especially in the playoffs, oof. I mean, that's tough. I mean, look at Cleveland's bench. They have Niang, Karis LeVert, Max Strus, Sam Merrill. I mean, these guys were contributors tonight. And that's what a real productive bench looks like. For the Nuggets, Hunter Tyson, good story this year, maybe has a future with the team in a couple of years. It's not going to be this year. Okay, 6 minutes tonight, 3 points. Okay. Peyton Watson, we already talked about him. He had a fantastic game tonight. And really over the last couple of weeks, he's been really, really good. But DeAndre, okay, 11 minutes, 4 points. Not much there from DeAndre. And Julian Strawther, 23 minutes, 4 of 8 from the field, 1 of 2 from 3, 11 points. The bench, the Nuggets have one of the worst benches in the NBA. I mean, there's no doubt about it. All the metrics say they have one of the worst benches. Their plus minus when Joker's off the floor is insane. So before we get out of here, I did want to just mention what I teased earlier about the stats when Jamal Murray starts versus when he doesn't, or when he plays versus when he doesn't play this season. Now, this is not including tonight's game, obviously, which, by the way, the Nuggets are now under 500 when Jamal Murray plays in a game this year. So just keep that in mind. They're under 500 when Jamal plays. So this is before tonight's game. With Jamal Murray, 11-11, now 11-12, winning percentage. Points per game, 117. With Russell Westbrook, they're 5-1. I guess 5-2 now technically because he did start tonight. 124.2 points per game. So nearly 7 points more per game when Russell Westbrook starts and Jamal sits. Opponents' points per game. When Jamal's playing, 117.5. When Russell Westbrook's starting, 111. Points per game differential with Jamal plus 0.2, with Russell Westbrook plus 13. Field goal percentage with Jamal Murray, 49%, Russell Westbrook, 51%. Pretty close there. Opponent's field goal percentage with Jamal Murray, 47%, Russell Westbrook, 43%. And lastly, three-point percentage is pretty close. With Jamal, it's 37%. With Russ, it's almost 39%. So there it is, everyone. Those are the numbers. Do with those what you will. I am not opposed to bringing Jamal Murray off the bench, especially after a game like tonight and how the season's gone so far. Like, why not? And now, my only pause in that is that Jamal does stagger with the second unit quite a bit, and it, not just this year, over the last couple of years, hasn't really worked out that well. Now, maybe it's a different mindset if he knows he's coming off the bench. But that is something that I would be interested to see how that could work out, especially with those numbers I just read off. I mean, obviously the Nuggets have been better so far this year when Russell Westbrook is in the starting lineup and Jamal is not. Small sample size with Russ, much larger sample size with Jamal, but the numbers are the numbers. So maybe that sort of lights a fire under Jamal and we see him get going. And the thing is with Jamal, if you were to bring him off the bench, it's not like the NFL where you're the Atlanta Falcons and if you go to Michael Penix Jr., you can't go back to Kirk Cousins. I mean, that's not what this is. If Jamal comes off the bench for a week or two or whatever it is, it's not like they can't bring him back into the starting lineup at some point. But at this point in the year, I'm willing to see Malone try any sort of combination of lineup. That's why I was okay with the lineup tonight. Didn't work out, but I was okay with him trying it and seeing what they've got with that combination, especially depending on how long Aaron Gordon's out. I mean, that calf, that's going to be bugging him all year, and he might have to sit out for quite a while to truly get that thing right. We'll see what happens. But would you be okay with Michael Malone bringing Jamal off the bench? In fact, would that be the better thing to do? I would love to see your thoughts on that. Dante, let's see here. You already asked me that. Okay, sorry. Already read that. Let's see here. Avs are rocking. Somebody says, let's see. What is the score of the Avs game? Let me check. Oh, they're up 2-1. Awesome. With about 2 minutes to go. So Lekkonen's got both goals for the Avs. So Nathan McKinnon, both assists. All right, cool. So the Avs look like they're 2 minutes from closing this thing out in Utah. Boy, isn't it nice to have a legitimate goaltender back for the Avs? They feel like a real team again. It's great. Okay, let's see here. Dante says, yeah, Peyton Watson was great, but was he better than Brown or KCP? No, but that's not what Peyton Watson's there to do. In fact, Christian Brown is really the one, especially KCP. He's trying to fill those shoes, and I think Christian's done a phenomenal job of that this year. Over the last couple of games, he's cooled off a bit. Hasn't been shooting the three ball nearly as well, but he's been fine. And I thought, defensively tonight, at least, he was like one of the only people that was even like giving Donovan Mitchell a workout on the defensive end, if that's a positive. He obviously wasn't great. I mean, Donovan went off and the Cavs scored 149 points. So I'm not going to say anybody was good defensively tonight, but at least Christian, when he was in there, looked like he was making Donovan Mitchell work for his buckets. When he was not in there, I mean, these guys were just uncontested 3 after 3. So, yeah, we'll see what happens. But would you be okay with the Nuggets bringing Jamal Murray off the bench for the foreseeable future to see if they can shake this thing up? I'm fine with it. But again, like I said, I think it's inevitable that they make a trade. If this was the team, how they were playing, if this was 3 years ago, Denver Nuggets, I don't think they make a move at the deadline. Because I think they were still willing to be, the front office was still willing to be patient with this group. There's no time to be patient anymore. And again, I brought this up before, and the Avs are about a year ahead in this part of their eras, of the McKinnon era and the Jokic era. The Avs are like 1 year ahead of the Nuggets. Well, what did we see last year from the Avalanche? They weren't willing to be patient with the young guys. They weren't willing to be patient with Bowen Byram. And I get it. Now, Casey Middlestat needs to shoot the puck. But they saw that it wasn't working. And I know they said that because Chris McFarland said it wasn't working and we had to make a move. Well, now I think that's what the Nuggets front office is kind of asking themselves and talking about amongst themselves is it's not working as it's constructed. And they've got to get better defensively around Nikola Jokic, and they've got to get more consistent around the big fella as well. So tough loss for the Nuggets tonight. Again, they fall to the Cavs 149-135 is your final. But the good news for the Nuggets is they'll be right back at it tomorrow with a back-to-back against the Detroit Pistons at Ball Arena. That game's at 7 o'clock tomorrow night, 6:30 pregame on Altitude Sports Radio 92.5. And then you can hear myself on the post-game show probably around 9:30 after the game tomorrow night. And we'll see if the Nuggets can get a bounce-back victory over the Detroit Pistons. I think the Nuggets are 5 or 6-0 this year on the second night of a back-to-back. So good prospects for the Nuggets coming up tomorrow night. But that's going to do it for the post-game show tonight. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining the show, and we will chat with you tomorrow night.